Hey guys, welcome to the HYM podcast, the podcast talking about all aspects of motorsport, from four wheels to two wheels and everything in between. I'm your host, Nick Yellerley, BMW factory driver. I'm joined by fellow Brummie and host Jake Hughes, Rocket Venturi Formula E reserve driver, and also producer Alex Merley, ex-world supersport rider who is out in Spain trying to reignite his career at the moment and also trying to get his FTP higher than Jake's.
I'm not too far off now.
How are we doing?
Like at his peak, he was pretty good, wasn't he? But he's a bit of a downward trajectory.
So on today's show, we have a good friend of ours. He's raced in all levels of junior racing, winning championships and races pretty much all the way through, culminating in his F1 debut with Williams Grand Prix and the Sakhir Grand Prix in 2020. And here to talk about that and many things besides, it's Jack Aitken. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
So let's get straight to it.
I've just got to ask this straight away, because you said podcasts about all things two wheels, four wheels, everything in between. When you getting the tricycle lads on?
Next episode.
Yeah, what the sidecar folks? We get some of them on, couldn't we?
I could actually get some of those boys.
There's got to be good content there somewhere. They're all mental.
There's some serious questions to be asked to those guys.
Yeah, especially the passengers, because they're just like, they're the ones just clinging on for dear life. So yeah, we should get some of those
on the ride.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get straight into it. So I think obviously people would have who are watching this probably know of your name now, mate, and obviously the Grand Prix in Bahrain would have helped that a lot. But I think it'd be quite cool to tell people about how you kind of got into racing to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. So I started a little bit earlier than you, Jake. I started when I was 7 in go-karts, just because I went to a few birthday parties and stuff like that and really liked it, because I was quite scrawny as a kid. So football, rugby, that wasn't for me. But when I got in a rental car, I was pretty quick. So I was like begging my parents to go back and do more, and just started from there, really. My brother started doing it as well. He was a couple of years younger than me. So it was like family weekends out. And then unfortunately it got a bit more serious after that, and just started doing European competitions, and eventually stepping up into cars when I was 17, I think, in something called the Intersteps Championship in the UK, which was using the old Formula BMW cars. Then I did Formula Renault for a few years, and that's where you and I were teammates in 2015 at Koiranen GP. No one can pronounce their name. Koiranen. After driving for them, that's complete mystery. But that was a good year. And then I was in the Renault Sport Academy after that, which went on for 4 years. I was a part of that and was reserve driver in that time as well at Renault, and did GP3 for a couple of years, where we were still racing against each other, and then Formula 2 for the last 3 years, and have now become Williams reserve driver last year.
Yeah, you started. What's that?
That's my CV. Off the list.
Yeah, that's
what he sends out to the teams to get the drive.
It's funny said it already. Might as well end it.
4 watts per kilo FTP.
Well, that's what I really would like to get onto, but we are supposed to be talking about motorsport. But yeah, I mean, you live near Butmore, don't you?
Yeah, so this basically was my local track, but they don't do any. They don't do anything except the rental stuff now, which is a bit sad. But that's where I got my racing license, and where I raced for the first 3 or 4 years. Do
they really not do anything there? Just the car, just the rental stuff? That's such a shame.
Sorry, hang on.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's such a shame. I did my first go-kart race there when I was 15 or 16 in junior TKM. And I can remember it well because I got fired off straight on at the first corner, straight into the wall, my first ever racing. So I remember it quite well, but I really liked the track. And obviously it's renowned for all the videos of Hamilton coming through the pack in his cadet days. And it was really, really good track. So it's a shame that it's not running as it should be anymore.
I think they had some money troubles in the last few years, and the corporate side of things just brings in a lot more steady income. So they've had to shut it down. Yeah, it's a bit sad.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Obviously, I started a bit later than you, but I think when I came into it in karting, you were probably the year before 2009-ish. You were racing Minimax, I think, on a Gillard.
Yeah, that's right.
Chassis, if I got that
Gillard.
right.
People who really know about their kart chassis will know that the Gillard was the one in the UK in the winter. When some grip went down, maybe not.
Yeah, they don't go for a Tony kart.
It was that the car that always used to wong off the circuit when it got really, really hot. It was like, do, off you went.
So for those who don't know, basically, Tony Kart was obviously like, that was the one everyone was on. Gillard was made by a guy called Tim in a shed, no joke, with 2 welders. And he even told me one day we were doing some testing because we were the factory Gillard team. We were doing some testing and one of the chassis that he brought out was a bit wank. And we didn't really know what was going on. So we're like, Tim, what did you change on the chassis? He said, nothing, but that was welded by Bob, insert a name, I forget his name. I was like, what do you mean it was welded by Bob? And he was like, well, we've got two welders. We got, Tom and Bob, and Bob isn't a good welder. So all the chassis that he welded are a bit iffy. They're just like, mate.
I can't imagine Tony parts like that.
Yeah. I'm sure it's exactly the same QC going on there.
No, I was on a bill, so it wasn't exactly cream of the crop either, but I think probably better than a Gillard.
But you started when you were what? You started when you were 16? No, a bit younger.
Yeah, 2010. Yeah, I think you were still in kart in 2010 though, weren't you? Because I seem to remember.
Yeah.
When I started in easy kart, so I didn't enter Super One or anything like that till 2011. But I think even around that time, you were still racing in karting. I seem to remember with George in Minimax potentially.
I think 2010, I was racing against George in Minimax, and then I was also doing Euromax juniors in Europe. And then the year after that was my last year in karting. So yeah, just as I was finishing, you were blossoming, starting out. Yeah.
I was finishing runner-up in Easy Kart Senior 2011. Yeah.
Would you say that was the peak of your career?
It's all gone downhill since then, yeah.
Yeah. It's not far off, is it? Really. I reckon the best win I ever had was in Easy Kart, but obviously it's not. Probably maybe it's not so hard.
It's on a barrel.
Yeah. Well,
I think Easy Kart has a place in history, mate. Don't do yourself down.
Well, it's now called Daniel Ricciardo Series, I think.
Is it? I had no idea that was what it was.
Yeah, well, it was at one point. I don't know if it still is, but he sponsored it, yeah. But after I left, obviously, because he, too much pressure.
What are you lying for?
It's a good point, though, isn't it? Like, I don't know if you've talked about this already on one of your episodes, but it's pretty amazing how early most people start, and that the trend is for people to start even earlier nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Nick, you started around about 15, 16 as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I was quite late as well. So I was 2 months before my 16th birthday. I started in junior TKM at the time it was, and then what did I do? Went straight from that to ICA and Super Libre it was at the time when the engine sounded really good, and then to cars in 2009 was my first year. So I'm obviously getting old compared to you guys. As you can see, every now and then you see slightly balding spot and whatnot. It's all the stress and strains of it all. But yeah, from then onwards, you see kids, and they get bought their first go-kart at 4, and they can actually start racing at 6 now. I think it used to be 8 when I started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think at 6 years old, I could barely ride a bike or walk properly, and they're being thrown in a go-kart with capabilities of doing 50 miles an hour, racing with grids of God knows how many, 30, 40, with budgets of, I dread to think, at 6. It's the landscape of motorsport has changed completely since 2008, 2009.
For sure. For me, it's the level of professionalism that some of those kids are, like the seriousness that they're taking it with, because I don't think I have such a problem with people starting early and doing like Bambino karts at the age of 6 or whatever. But it's the fact that now when I've done some driver coaching and karting with kids at 8, 9, first of all, I don't think you should be getting coached that young, but
no.
I'm not going to say no to a job. And
a bit of cash.
They have like their own fully painted lids, and pretty much everything is brand new, proper engines, 2 or 3 spares in the van, and it's like you don't really need to take it that seriously from so young.
No, I mean, I kind of look back sometimes and think, did I actually miss out at all starting at 15, 16? I mean, obviously, the time in the seat, so to speak, I did. But I mean, I always kind of think that, you know, I had the ability to just grow up and be a kid, you know, go to school as a normal kid does. And then I didn't get the chance to, or the opportunity to get, messed up, or to get sort of distracted by the professionalism, like you say. Because it's like, I mean, it's they take it so seriously, and I don't want to like throw shade on that, because, you know, that in WSK and CRK or whatever it's called now, it's quite, you know, serious stuff. But I don't know. I just think there's do you see that video of that lad in the European Championship or the World Championships where he got knocked off and he threw the pod at the guys who were driving past?
How bad was that?
Yeah,
he was a bit old. He was an older guy, wasn't he? He's been karting for a while. He's just
I think you're right. It's 20. He was 21, and the kid he was trying to have a fight with or whatever was 16. But back to the age thing, I agree that starting young is fine, but then, you know, let them have some fun. They're already doing these Instagram posts like they're just got out of the car at a Formula One Grand Prix and they've got to do BBC and ITV and all this, and they're trying to do that already when they should just be getting in, seeing if they're fast or not, without the coaching, have some fun. And cost limitations then would be a lot easier, because you haven't got, I need the best engine, I need this, I need that at that age. And I think that would hopefully then filter up and keep the costs more in check. And it seems like a common thing. We're always talking about costs in motorsport in general and in karting, and we have done on previous podcasts, but it's because it's such at the forefront of everyone's mind on trying to make it better for the new generation to actually open up and for them to be able to afford it. Because, as you know, getting your dad to spend X, Y, Z is bloody hard.
It's just naturally it's a fundamental problem with motorsport, isn't it? The kit's always going to be expensive, but you can definitely make it worse for yourself or easier. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, you could be some serious debt if you take karting so seriously, until when your kid gets to 15, 16 years old and wants to go into a car, and you're already probably plus 1 million.
We've all heard the horror stories, haven't we? Parents taking out mortgages on the house and all sorts.
It should just be for fun, especially at national level to begin with.
Completely. And off the back of that, I mean, so you stepped up, you say, into single seaters around 16, 17, into intercepts, which I remember, it was that one sponsored by Racing Steps at the time, or not?
Yeah, I think they had a couple of drivers do it.
So it was like the current Formula 4 type of thing. Yeah, I presume. So what team did you do it with? What were your successes, and how did you enjoy the swap between karting and cars? Because for me, I actually, particularly my first year in cars, I found it really quite difficult coming from karts to adapt to using those new tyres and exploiting the most out of a car in those early, I'd say definitely 6 months. Yeah.
So before then, I'd done a decent amount of karting, not to the highest level. I did Rotax, and probably that's probably above TKM. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not the same as the factory and easy cut. It wasn't the same as like the factory level of racing that you see a lot of guys coming from. So I was probably a little bit green still to the professionalism side of it. I raced with Fortec in that first year, and I did a couple of tests before the season got underway. We also hadn't really worked out at that point that testing was quite important, and the more track time, the better, etc. So I only did the 2 tests, and rocked up for the first race at Alton Park, and we did the practice. That was all okay, and it was kind of like mid-pack. I think it was just average. Went out for quali, or tried to go out for quali, and my car wouldn't start. 10 minutes went by. I'm like, half the session's gone. I'm starting to sweat in the car. Mechanics are working away, and then they finally get it fired up, send me out, and on the out lap, I put it into the barriers at Druids. Do you know they're really double right? Yeah, literally split the gearbox off the back of the car.
Oh, proper job.
And proper one, yeah. I was a bit keen to get out, so yeah, and that was like a bit of an eye opener, because obviously if you have a smash in a kart, most of the time the worst thing that can happen is you write off the frame or the motor. and obviously that's expensive. But compared to splitting a car in half, it's a whole different ball game financially, for one thing. And it was also just a bit of a shock to the system because that was probably the first big crash that I'd had. So that wasn't nice. But bounced back from that and had a decent season where there were a couple of guys who were a bit more experienced. And I was just trying to get on their level, learn from them. Matt Parry was my teammate, and he won the championship eventually. So learning off of him and winning one or two races here and there, and just getting into the swing of it really with cars and adapting to the weight, managing a different style of where track time is quite valuable, and you can't just go testing on a Wednesday at Wilton Mill. You have to do it within the series guidelines and really make the most of it. So yeah, it was good. I liked doing that national level series before jumping up into European stuff, because there's something quite nice about racing nationally on British circuits that are like Mickey Mouse, and the weather's always crap. And there's some of the support series, you've got like classic minis and supercarts racing, which is just mental.
I mean, I only did 1 year of national racing myself in F4. I think you said it was 2012, wasn't it, when you went into Intersteps?
Yeah.
So I think BRDC F4 probably replaced Intersteps in 2013. But I only did 1 year, and ever since then, I've only driven Silverstone in the UK. But if anyone asks me, what's your favourite track? I mean, obviously you think about Silverstone, Macau, Spa, but Alton Park and Brands Hatch and
Brands Hatch GP.
Yeah. I loved Alton Park, and I only ever drove it once, and it still sticks with me.
Alton Park, and it's easy to have a shunt there, as both Jack knows and I know, because I did it in turn 1 on the inside wall and took a gearbox off as well.
That's a good one.
It's quite easy. Yeah, quite easy to do.
There have been some huge shunts at Alton. Have you seen the video of the car? I can't even remember what series it was. I think it was F4, but it was barrel rolling down from
the Carlin, the blue one,
pretty much all the way to turn 2.
That
was email,
wasn't it? I remember his name. It was because a friend of all ours, I think you know Ricky Christo. Chris he was coaching the guy. I remember his name was Videy. I think it was Videy Nathan. But yeah, he took off like 20-30 foot in the head, and it just hit it at the right angle. He walked out.
He just hit it at the right angle or the wrong angle. Lynn had a big one there when I was racing with Alex out of turn 1 going down to turn 2. I think he clipped someone's back wheel, got a better run, and just went over. And I know he dislocated his knee and whatnot. So I can remember some big old shunts there. You get it wrong, you're proper. Well, in the shit, aren't you?
What was Cadwell like for you boys in the cars?
I don't think we ever drove it.
I haven't driven it, actually.
I did a test. I did one test at it, but it was more that just running in a gearbox or something, and then you've got to be super careful, obviously, because it's the one with the jump in there.
It's the mountain, yeah.
Where they take off, and I think I did it for. There was Simon Baldry who used to work at Fortec, and then he had his own
SWB Motorsport.
That's the one. Yeah, I think I just did it as a shakedown. SWB. He was good. He was my first ever car mechanic.
They're a good little operation. I did quite a few. I did some Formula Renault Bark during the old Formula Renault. I did a couple of tests with them at Mallory Park. What a combination!
Yeah, that's down the road from us.
The first time I drove there, I couldn't believe the crown on the road of the pit straight, because I came out the last corner and I was like, fucking hell, the car's just moving by itself, like, working to keep it in a straight line.
Driving down near 40.
That's how you do it, keeping your tyres warm in the winter.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your foray into national racing, as you say, and then 2013 you went into Formula Renault Europe, or NEC, or whatever, which one it was.
NEC, yeah. So I stayed with Fortec for another year, mostly because we didn't know any better. But we had a good experience, and we were like, why not? And we felt like Fortec were one of the leading British teams at the time, so it just kind of felt logical. And we did NEC. Matt Parry moved up as well. I finished second to him that year in Intersteps, I think. I can't remember. Second or third. And then we both moved up to NEC and started racing on the European circuits, which was another new experience, much bigger and wider, obviously. So it's quite a different style compared to places like Holton. And I also did my first wildcard races in Eurocup that year as well, which was like the big boys Formula Renault stuff. So That was quite a good year. Again, I finished second to Matt, but again, through the year, it was kind of one of those things where it was good to have him there as a faster teammate, because I was learning off him all the time, and I managed to beat him a couple of times towards the end, and that would build the foundation for me to race again with him and Fortec in Eurocup in 2014, where I then beat Matt and was, I think, 7th in Eurocup overall, and we started winning races again at the end of the year. So this was always the trend for me, was trying to learn in the first half of the year and catch up, and then capitalize and actually get results in the second half of the year. And partly that was because I was still doing school full time. And then things changed after 2014 because I finished my school.
Yeah. And then you went to, well, that was our year after that, wasn't it? In Kyron and Kuranen.
Karainen, I called it always, yeah. I don't know why, just Karainen. I just think if you say it in a Finnish accent, like Kimi Räikkönen would, it sounds like Karainen, like that. Oh. You know what I mean?
Or abbreviate it to KGP.
Oh, that sounds a bit too close to something Russian, that.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Yeah, that was year, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a good year, because we both did Alps as well, just to get track time, really, wasn't it? So we were fighting for the championship in Alps and in the Euro Cup for most of the year, and we managed to not fall out for the most part. One time, I remember one time we nearly had a falling out.
Where was that?
Oh, come on, tell us all. We need to know inside info.
I want to know.
I don't know if you could even go that far, but I just remember feeling guilty afterwards.
It obviously loved you from miles back, didn't it?
Where was it? I don't remember.
You don't remember? It was Red Bull Ring, Alps, turn 1.
No, I don't.
So I can't remember exactly, but I think we were both on the front row, and I was on the outside, so maybe you were on pole. I can't remember. Anyway, you were the inside, and going up to turn 1, I had like just my nose ahead of you going into the braking zone, and I was just like, I'm just fully sending this right around the outside, and went over the sausage way out onto the tarmac runoff, and just basically fucked off and took the lead.
Oh, I don't remember that.
And then
glad I don't.
Afterwards, you just said you would do the same, which I thought was very diplomatic. So I thought that was a bit cheeky.
I was probably fuming.
You look like you were fuming. I don't know, Nick, if you can probably tell, but like when Jake gets that look on his face where he's quite serious and he's like, not. I can't describe it.
Like, you're choosing your words carefully.
Yeah, exactly. You had a very serious look on your face when I got out the car. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. You always know when a Brummie is angry because they go even more Brummie as well. So the accent gets even more pronounced. So that's what you got to watch out for.
Yeah. Normally the phrase something like, oh my God.
Oh my. Oh.
Comes out.
Yeah.
That was the only time that year, and that if you can't even remember it, it can't have been that bad. So I thought we managed to do pretty well out of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think I'd come into that from NEC. So I remember you'd done 2 years of Renault, but only 1 year of Eurocup afterwards. So I was obviously aiming for the title, but also knowing I was going to have to learn off you a lot. And I think both of us pushing each other really kind of, I mean, like you said, we finished first and second in Alps, I think. And I think till the last race, we were more or less in the top 3 or 4 in Eurocup at the same time.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that I look for even now, is to have a quick teammate, because it makes such a huge difference, especially when you get to the series where your track time is even more restricted. Because if you've got 2 guys who are able to test stuff instead of just 1, that's a huge win, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I used to love that year, especially with it was the last year World Series, wasn't it? 2015.
The last strong year of World Series, yeah.
Yeah. What he went to? Did Renault pull out after 2015 because the 3.5 championship changed? Yeah,
I think the 3.5s kept running, but it wasn't under the World Series, and it wasn't sponsored by Renault.
Yeah, I used to love those weekends.
They're the best ones. 100%, they were the best ones. Because I didn't do Eurocup like you boys. I did a couple of, in and outs, the guest ones when I was doing British Renault with High Tech, and then did GP3. But then I went back to World Series to do a few races in 11. Just jumped in the car and I hadn't tested it and jumped in. And then I did a full season in 12. with the likes of, Bianchi and Da Costa and Rossi. I mean, the Magnussen
at that time.
Yeah, I think for like 2 or 3 years it was super strong, as was Eurocup as well. And that's where I felt that motorsport in general was at some crazy level. When you look down the lists and you see who was driving in Formula 3 or World Series GP2 at the time, it was not just good guys at the top. It was a fully stacked field where you could get the top 10, 15, win a race, and you would be like, okay, yeah, that's fair enough. So that was interesting. I can remember watching the championships closely after, and you guys coming through. I'm not that old. I'm 30, so I've still got a while, particularly in GTs. But I can remember watching you guys come through. Obviously, I always watch the Brits. More so Jake, if I'm honest, because he was from where I'm from in Birmingham, but both you as well. And you won Eurocup?
Yeah, so that year, me and Jake were racing, like Jake says, pretty much until the last few rounds, we were both in contention. You were leading it for a while, weren't you, Jake? Until like Spa or something?
I think halfway through the year I might have been leading it after round 4 or 5, and then I had a bad last 2 rounds.
Yeah, for undisclosed reasons. But it was
#wow.
No, it was mega competitive that year, wasn't it? Because I remember the last race at Jerez, there were 5 people who could win the championship, and eventually I came out on top, but it was so close. But by winning that championship, I was then able to go onto the Renault Academy, because they took the top 3, I think, from the Eurocup that year, and the winner of 3.5, which was Roland. And then we all kicked that off together, and that was like the start of F1 involvement for me.
Oh, that's interesting. But with the F1 junior program, getting picked up by an F1 team and having them support your career, do you think that really, aided the process a lot with, well, I guess finding sponsors? I don't know how Renault worked. Did they fund you completely so you didn't have to worry about that? And, how did that really help your career moving forwards from that point?
So it was I think I'm allowed to say this. It was basically,
oh, yeah, you are.
Like a lot of programs, I think, it was never like a clear-cut rule for this is the financial support that you're going to get, and that's how it was for the 4 or 5 years. It was always changing. It was always a bit dependent on the parent company, so Renault, obviously, in this case, and how well things were going there. And also your results. So it was a bit results based, and some of that was written in contract and some of it was subjective. So, in the early years, particularly after I won the Eurocup, because there was still prize money at that time for winning the Eurocup, I was pretty much fully funded in the immediate aftermath of that, which was amazing.
Yeah,
obviously, because like you said, sponsors, bloody hell, even at a high level in junior single seaters, it's so hard to come by. So that was my first bit of relief, if you like, from having to find the money ourselves. And then, it was, like I say, kind of results based after that. So I went and did GP3 with Arden, and my first experience with Pirelli Tyres, bloody hell. That was a learning curve.
Yeah. Yes.
And, I mean, I don't know. I think you've both driven in GP3, yeah. So
yeah,
it was really hard to head around that after being on Michelin's, which are I think a great racing tire. Pirelli obviously are very different.
Special.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Yeah, special. Yeah. And
they have their own little
political correct. Yeah, the political correct way to say it.
Yeah. Well, technically, I'm not racing in F2 anymore, so I haven't signed that agreement that says you cannot criticize Pirelli.
For now, yeah.
For now.
I bet people wouldn't believe that we have to do that.
I think it's been mentioned a couple of times in F1, hasn't it? But it's, to be honest, that's kind of, I have seen those kinds of agreements elsewhere in motorsport for other companies. It's just that Pirelli has such a controversial reputation. I think it gets highlighted even more. Yeah,
I mean, that's why I kind of loved Renault, not even just for like the fans being in for free, and you felt like you were the main event always, every single place you went. But the cars, even 2 litre or 3.5, was just like you could push and every single lap for all the race distance. And that was basically because of the tyre. And like you say, you go to
we can all agree 3.5 car was, I think, one of the best cars I've ever driven.
Yeah, I would have after our season 2015, I was down to do 3.5 in 2016. And then it was just because Renault pulled out sort of around Christmas time that decided to change my mind and go to Pirelli World.
Yeah. The World Series. I mean, again, I drove the first, I did the older gen in 2011, and then the new car came 2012. So I did the first year of the new car when they still had the side skirts as well, slightly more horsepower, because they weren't bothered about the gearbox braking or anything at the time. And I can remember physically, actually, at the first test, people were doing cool down laps at Paul Ricard, even these guys that had done GP2, Sam Bird, Bianchi at the time. And I was like, I've been training hard. I feel like I'm strong. I remember being 82 kg strong, training with Jerry Convey at the time. So I knew I was, fit. And everyone was doing cool down laps because they were bollocks. They couldn't do 2 or 3 laps in a row because it was so physical and you just hadn't driven the car. And that was mainly because the tyre, the Pirelli, you have to do your special prep, your 1 lap, cool down, 1 lap. So for qualifying, it's not so difficult physically. But then on a Michelin, when you can do 2, 3, 4, all at the same speed, and just correct your driving ever so slightly to get that 10th here or 10th there. I mean, I used to be shaking once I got out, just so physically done.
Can you guys describe the characteristic the Pirelli gives you in the cars? Because I've raced Pirellis on 600, 300. All my junior career in Britain was also on Pirelli. So I really haven't raced anything else. I raced Dunlops last year, a couple of years ago, and I struggle like anything on those. But could you guys describe what the characteristic is of the Pirelli compared to a Michelin or something?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just the it can't take combined loads. So whether that's going into the corner or coming out, it really doesn't like being asked to do 2 things at once, steering and slowing the car down, and on the exit, obviously powering on. So you have to almost segment out the corner, brake in a straight line, do your turning, and then do your accelerating. Whereas a Michelin, you can just fire it in, or most other tyres, I would say, to some extent, you can just fire it in and kind of do your driving mid corner, and it'll handle it. It doesn't really get bothered.
I mean, I think the other thing is that the Pirelli tyre has you hear F1 got teams and drivers talk about it as such a narrow temperature working window, that even F1 teams, they have all the sensors in the world, and Jack obviously knows that now, and it still can be proved difficult. But in the lower Formula F2 and now F3, you don't have any sensors. I mean, I think we did halfway through last year for the first time ever, but you don't have these sensors to help teach drivers, or especially rookies coming in, how to sort of manage that and how to feel where the window is, so to speak. And you feel like so many times you're driving blind and things are happening. I've normally in tyre warm up or in the race, where you almost feel like you can't explain it, whether it be tyre deg or just no grip or something like that. And all it is because you're out the window, but it's so hard to learn where to be in it because you don't have the sensors.
Yeah, completely right. I mean, and the F1 stuff, I've not got a full race weekend experience as Jack does, but I've done a couple of tests, and even to the extent where they're watching the tyre temperatures to send you out for that qualifying run so closely, and they will wait X amount of time with either the blanket still on or with a cooling gun to make sure that it's exactly right on core and bulk temperature before you're sent out. And then you're told to do the out lap at a certain speed through X corner, or certain loads through X, Y, Z corner, for example, at Barcelona, which is the only place I've done the 4 days running, just to make sure they're completely ready and in sync to go. And that's how sensitive they are. And if you don't have those sensors, to feel it, to get exactly everything right as a driver is a much more difficult thing to come by. For sure. What's your experience there with say your first F1 race in Bahrain, Jack, with the, obviously it's hotter conditions. I wasn't there, so I don't know the exact conditions, but I presume that they don't heat the tires for as much.
It's funny you say that, because the layout was obviously quite unique for F1, with it being like 80% flat out, basically, with 4 corners. So we were actually finding that for the first quali lap anyway, it was really hard to get the tyres in. And that's something that you'll see. There's a bit of a difference across the grid, obviously, with the Mercs and the Red Bulls with more downforce and load, putting more energy into the tyre. It's not such an issue for them, but for us, that was an issue. And so we were still heating them relatively high and doing what we could to keep the tyre in on the outlap as well. And it's something that George and Nicky have complained about in some of the other circuits, especially when we had colder conditions. Like I think Imola this year was really, or last year was really cold. So keeping the tyre in the window, especially in the race, is really, really difficult, and you almost can't afford to tyre manage. I found it really interesting. There was definitely a lot more information available, which makes the driver's life a lot easier. And I think even with all of that information, at the end of the day, as a driver, you have to get a bit of a feel for it. So the first few tyre sets that I had were almost wasted because I didn't really know how to get the best out of it. And then you start to learn towards the end of that outlap, whether that, the front is where it should be or not. And you get a feel for, you get the temperature readouts on the dash, and sort of what you want to be aiming for.
Yeah. I mean, I've jumped the gun a little bit there. Firstly, I should have asked, how was it, being an F1 driver for the whole weekend? Because that all came up obviously super late with Lewis getting ill. And then, you could sort of slowly see it falling into place. And until something is signed up and it's done and all ready to go, particularly in the motorsport world, you're never sure. So how was it for you sat there in Bahrain waiting for the yes, and then explain how it was to be an F1 driver for the weekend? Because it's one thing doing a test or whatever, but to actually be on the grid, sat there waiting for those red lights to go, it must have been really quite a special weekend for you.
Yeah, no, it was, obviously. I mean, so going back to the start, obviously I heard the news that Lewis got COVID on Tuesday morning, I think it was. And I didn't really think anything of it at the time, because I'd always known the structure in terms of reserve drivers was Mercedes have their guys, which I think are Van Dorn and Gutierrez. And Williams obviously had me, but George he's not contracted as the Mercedes driver as such. He is part of the Mercedes family, but his contract is with Williams. So that's pretty clear cut. And certainly in the previous instances where this has come up as an issue, Williams were pretty sort of steadfast that they weren't going to let George go. So I didn't think anything of it. But then later on Tuesday, I actually just started messaging George just to see what was the situation, because I saw some rumors flying around, and we started talking, and he was saying he was trying to make it happen and trying to get in that Mercedes seat, because obviously that would have been an amazing opportunity for him as well. So I started, talking to people at Williams, and it turned out that it was being talked about. There were lots of phone calls going back and forth on that afternoon, and a lot of waiting around as well. And eventually on Tuesday night, Simon from Williams, who was team principal, basically said, look, we're not going to know until the morning. We've got some paperwork to do and sort out some legal issues, but it looks like it could happen, but I'll tell you in the morning. So then I had to try and sleep, wondering whether I was going to make my
F1 that ain't going to happen, is it?
Yeah. But, you always work yourself into a state. Like I'd gone into a situation where I was like, it's going to happen. Like, just too excited to not think about that possibility. So when I got the news, like 8 a.m. the next day, that, it's happening, we're going to announce it in an hour, like come into the track and we'll get ready. It was almost just relief was the major feeling, because I was like, oh, thank God it hasn't been like taken away at the last minute because of some legal issue. It's actually happening. And from that point forward, I was so busy trying to get everything ready that I didn't actually have time to sit down and really process it. Sure. Because I went in Wednesday and Thursday to do all the prep, and like a lot of press stuff going on as well. So by the time I got into the car, I was just flat out already. So it almost helped in a way. I didn't have time to sit and process what was actually happening until after the weekend. And
I think it went quite well as well, I would say. Yeah. I mean, looking from the outside, how close were you to out qualifying Nick? It was really close, wasn't it?
One little mistake.
Yeah, I was a bit gutted about that. Because all the way through FP1, FP2, I was slower than him, and I was like just building myself in, because it was a different approach to. Because did you do an FP1, Nick, or did you just do testing?
No, just testing, never an FP1. Okay. Yeah,
because I've done one FP1 as well, and that for me was like a completely different experience, because you've got 30 laps, including all the cool downs and out laps, to like get up to speed and show that you can do something, which is mental. Yeah, that's a dangerous recipe. But compared to that, I was like, I've got loads of time on my hands here. Just take your time. So I did, and FP1, FP2, I was a bit slow, but kind of catching up. And then FP3 Saturday morning, for the first time, I was quicker than Nicky. And I was just like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, and put the pressure on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And then quali, the first two runs, first 2 of 3, I was quicker than him again. And I was like, this is going all right. And I could see he was getting a bit, feeling the pressure a bit. And then I bloody messed up the last corner.
It knew it was the last corner. I remember it.
Yeah, it went wide over the not the Astro, but like the concrete.
Yeah. And it just sucks you wide, doesn't it? There.
Oh, that corner's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I found out in the race as well. Damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, that one bites hard, because Alex Albon had his big shunt there, right? In FP1 or 2.
I watched that and I was like, I made a mental note. I was like, that like, as soon as you get off onto the sand, there is no grip. And I still made exactly the same mistake in the race, because before that, like you say, it was going pretty well. Like pace was all right. I was hanging on to the battle between, I think it was Nicky and Giovinazzi, and Kimi was behind me. And I was slowly sort of catching up. And I just pushed it a little bit too hard. And I got onto the curb on the exit. And I thought, rather than hold this and try and pull it back in, I'm just going to open up the steering a little bit so there's no chance of the rear kicking out. And I went wide, all 4 wheels onto the concrete, and it just snapped. And I was like, gone. So
yeah,
really lucky, obviously, that I still managed to finish. But that was a big mistake of the weekend. Other than that, I was mega happy with how it went. It was really.
You should be. I think you should be as well, because to be thrown in it, although if you've done some testing, like I said, an F1 race weekend is super difficult, and you're being watched. You're being scrutinized by everyone. TV is actually following it, whereas in a test they don't. And from a bit of experience, when an F1 car is difficult to drive, and when they do go, they really do, and you can't get them back. They're that aero now that if even if you haven't done enough of your angle, then you'll stall the wings, and that's you're off. And also the tyre, I think for 2020 was peakier, and it is again for 2021 from Pirelli in terms of actually slip angle capabilities. So when it goes, that's it.
They're moving a lot more in that direction for sure, because the aero and, like you say, the tyres, everything is moving towards being less forgiving. Yeah, and I think 21. Speaking because I know a lot of people from different teams as well, and speaking to them about the direction that their cars are going in, it sounds like everyone on the grid is going to have to deal with that sharper drop off as soon as you get a little bit of slip coming in, and the car's running a bit of yaw compared to the wind. You're going to be in big trouble. So it's really, really knife edge stuff.
Yeah, it's super.
You're still the reserve driver for this year, aren't you?
TBC.
Oh, TBC. We can't get the inside
exclusive.
Yeah.
If you do, I'm kind of in a position in terms of FE in the same way, but like we saw towards the end of last year, and with Hülkenberg as well earlier in the year, it's kind of the time to be a reserve driver anyway. You might get go again.
Yeah, you never know. As careful as people want to be, you just can't discount when you're traveling through airports and planes and all of that stuff. You never know what could happen.
No, it can easily bite you. Have you had it?
I haven't, as far as I know. I'm still testing fairly regularly to be able to do simulator stuff, which is quite a nice peace of mind actually. But like I mentioned, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather right now. And I did have that moment of panic, like, I did go here the other day and I touched that. It's all good. I think I've just got some bug.
Yeah, it is a nightmare with all that sort of stuff, because I actually felt more comfortable. I got it when we were doing Spa 24 last year, and a load of the team got it, 4 drivers. So I was stuck in Munich and I couldn't leave the hotel room and whatever, and I felt, if I'm honest, a bit rough for 3 or 4 days. Wasn't nice, but actually I felt slightly more comfortable after I had it, because I knew there would be some sort of, armor from my body, my immune system to save me. So we get tested a lot. I know Jake does as well, with, again, for me, jumping into Aston Martin sim all the time, and Jake at Merck. So I quite like that, and I have self-tests at home. But since this COVID has come around, being that reserve driver and having the opportunity potentially coming around much more often is a lot more appealing than just it not happening. So it's a weird, different dynamic now.
I think it was one of the things last year that made it quite exciting from an outsider's point of view, like having Hulk come back into the Racing Point car and seeing yourself, Jack, jump in the Williams. I thought it really turned the season on its head a bit and did give that bit of entertainment value to it that we don't normally. Well, of course we see lots of entertainment, but it just added an extra factor in there to really spice things up last year.
Yeah, I liked seeing Hulkenberg back in just to see how quickly he got on top of it, because he can say what he wants, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't as well prepped as he maybe should have been. And I thought it was so impressive, the job that he did, especially at Silverstone. So
the story of him like being in a cafe and just receiving a phone call out the blue to then get on a plane and get to Silverstone.
He put a picture on social media, I think, of that moment.
Yeah, when he was actually on the phone. Yeah. Because when all that was kicking off, I was in the sim at the time, one of the days, and I was like, oh, who's going to do it? And for me, I haven't got a super license. I don't think I even had the points because I've been in GT for a while. So I was never thinking I'm going to do it, but I knew Gutierrez was definitely in for a shout, because I think at the time Racing Point were using the same. And then I said, oh, well, obviously I'd use Hulkenberg. And then next minute, he's all being rushed over, fitting into the seat. Done, I think he did like 5 laps in the sim, or 10 laps in the sim, just to get a little feel before getting his negative COVID test, and then running over. But, to qualify in the second weekend, at least it was to qualify third, man, it was super impressive. And then he jumped back in, and I was in the sim on Monday. And I obviously said, great job and whatever. And I said, how's the neck? And he was suffering big time, because I can imagine a race around there, having just been doing the odd GT stuff. Even if you've been training your neck, it's not the same as when you jump in and try and drive one of those things. So,
I think it did a little bit of padding in on the side.
Yeah, exactly. And getting bigger and bigger through be like Indy 500 again.
Do you think his performances at Silverstone were better, or at was it Nürburgring where he was in?
Points at Nürburgring, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know. He was pretty impressive in both, wasn't it? I just found Silverstone impressive because like I said, I don't think he'd had much preparation, and to just jump in like that was pretty impressive on a track that's pretty difficult. It takes a lot of commitment to drive an F1 car at Silverstone. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say you're probably right, because if you think about it, from Silverstone, obviously he's got a race distance or 2 under as well. Actually, only 1, because he didn't start the first race, did he? Bless him. But at least 1 race distance, and getting back used to how the car feels. Then in Nürburgring was only a couple of months later. So you already have an idea, and your body has an idea of what to expect. So, and I think I remember his GP2 days, he was the king of Nürburgring. So that I would say would have been a chunk better or easier for him than that.
Definitely, from my point of view, when I didn't know if I was going to race in Abu Dhabi as well as Bahrain, I was thinking that whole week running up to it. Now that I've done one race and run through the whole rhythm of a race weekend one time, it was going to be so much easier if I do get the chance, because once you've done everything that even just one time, at least you know what to expect, and everything just comes out a little bit more naturally. So I'm sure it was similar for him jumping into a car with a different engine, different operating system, and all of that as well.
How close did you get to driving again in Abu Dhabi?
So I knew from fairly early on that they were going to basically give Lewis every opportunity to get back that they could. So that meant obviously he got special permission to travel from Bahrain to Abu Dhabi, which normally people wouldn't be allowed to do that. And they would also wait for him basically until Saturday morning. because you only have to qualify the car to race. So on Tuesday already, they were saying, like, you know, you might end up practicing, and it could be that Lewis gets back in from Friday night or Saturday. But obviously it all happened a lot earlier than that. I found out Thursday night, and I think it was announced like either later that night or very early Friday morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's interesting. Recovery times as well. It depends on the person and all sorts, because I got tested positive on a Monday, and then the Wednesday night, the week after, I had already tested again and was clear, whereas a couple of the other guys had it in their system for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's really body dependent, I guess, how much viral load or whatever they want to call it you actually have. But I'm sure that you would have done a much better, or it would have been much easier, for you in Abu Dhabi, because everything, like you say, is subconscious. You don't really have to think, you know, do I change this switch in this position? Do I, you know, is that little tire wheel spin slip okay or not? And pit stops, they happen a lot faster compared to F2, GP2, and all that. So yeah, it's a shame it didn't happen, but I'm sure you'll get opportunities down the line, particularly with COVID.
I would say fingers crossed, but then I'm going to get cancelled on Twitter if I do so. I hope I never get the chance again. Okay.
No, there you are. Yeah, got to be so careful nowadays what you say, haven't you?
Yeah.
So side note, this is not really motorsport related, but I put out a tweet this morning, or it might have been last night. It's just a picture of me and my girlfriend.
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, you've seen it. And it's like a recreation of the meme of the guy who's shouting in the ear of the girl at a club, and the girl looking completely like not interested. Yeah. And the caption was something like, "Oh yeah, and on Tuesday Lewis got COVID, but then on Wednesday," and we got hate for that. Like people were.
You got hate for it.
Yeah, like okay, it's a very small proportion, but people were saying, "Oh, you shouldn't make a joke about someone getting COVID." I'm like, first of all, that wasn't the joke. Second of all, he's fine. Like,
There's people. Yeah, they've got nothing better to do at the moment, unfortunately, as well. Everyone's locked in their house. Keyboard warriors, you know, they'd never say it to your face at all, ever. They'd be too shy to even talk to you, most likely. But yeah, they'll quite happily type something really nasty, and it's just not on. Nowadays, you see it, and it's just really not on.
I heard something this morning on the radio of a footballer that had got a picture been taken with him on an airplane or an airport or something like that, and the guy was really friendly, you know, wanted to know everything about him and say, you know, great job, keep doing it. And then he posted that picture. This guy, I don't know how he came across it, posted it basically slagging him off for traveling or something like that. And it's like, you can't win. You might as well just ignore it, because some people will just say what they want to say. You
literally cannot win nowadays. Yeah, it's always it's the jealousy that will get them at the end of the day. It's just duck off a back's water, in my opinion. Just got to roll with it, because I mean, Jack, I'd say you've got the biggest social media profile compared in relative terms to all us, so you must get it more. But yeah, if I get it, I actually feel quite sorry for the person that has to say these things, because they must be quite sad individuals to have the time to go, oh, look at you, you know, get a life, mate.
And like you say, it's the fact that they would never ever say that in reality to your face. And even if you reply to them, half the time they backpedal like mad and say, "Oh no, that's not what I was saying." It's like,
yeah, sure.
I saw the perfect way to explain it. It was American football boss basically said, you know, in the past, before social media, to have an opinion, you had to have done something. You had to have worked hard, earn enough money, whatever you want to call it, to have that opinion, to be in the public eye. But nowadays, you don't. You just have an opinion and just say it, and you don't have the repercussions of it at all.
Yeah, that's completely right. I mean, anyway, it's just how life is nowadays. And back to more important stuff. What are we racing this year then, Jack? Do you know? Can you give us any insights of what you're working on,
easy car,
or anything like that?
Easy car,
easy car with Jake doing the.
I'm hitting up the contacts at Daniel Ricciardo HQ.
Yeah.
So I haven't signed anything yet, but hopefully in the coming weeks that will be sorted. I'm probably looking at doing multiple things, not F2, because
that's an exclusive.
Like I said before. What's that?
Yeah. We can make the little thumbnail and everything about that now.
Yeah,
Autosport, yeah. No, just because budget has been a big concern, and even if I could be on the grid, I've done it for 3 years. it's quite a big risk for a driver to go back when they've got a lot of experience, because you're expected to do very well, which is probably not super fair in the state of Pirelli Tyre Championships, because they are so unpredictable. And I think being with the right team at the right time is massively important. So rather than do that, I'd rather take what I've learned there and try in the world of endurance. So I might be doing some, coming over to the dark side.
Yeah, it's a good side. You'll enjoy it, I'm telling you. It's so much more fun, less pressure. The drivers are, well, as you'll find out, they're all flipping fast, and it's a completely different style of racing. Those endurance, you know, when you do your first 24 hours, it's like you've been through some next level journey, because it's so tough. And you just think, what, I don't know if I want to do that for the next couple of hours after you finished again. And then the day after, you're like, yeah, it's a bug. And if you do any race and you can do it in GTs, you have to do the Nordschleife, because it's just the best place in the world.
It is on my bucket list. Like, to be fair, a lot of endurance races are on my motor racing bucket list. Like, obviously, Le Mans 24, Nordschleife, Bathurst, Petit Le Mans. So all of these things.
Yeah, you have to do them.
Why do you boys think like endurance racing, like those races are so coveted almost? Because it's the same bikes, like, you know, Suzuka 8 Hour. You talk to everybody and they're like, just, I want to do that. Just looks awesome. They're
just much more of an event, aren't they? Like they're huge. It takes such a team effort. I think it looks like, anyway, from the outside, compared to Monaco Grand Prix is probably the one that you might compare it to, or the Indy 500. Yeah. Those are big races, but I think the atmosphere and the whole like build up to a 24-hour race is hard to beat.
I feel like obviously everyone knows F1, but if you're a fan of motorsport, a proper fan, you'll be a fan of Nürburgring, Spa, Bathurst, all of that, because you appreciate what you're watching. I mean, even we spoke about Hulkenberg, but he wanted to do it whilst he was still an F1 driver, Le Mans I'm speaking of. And that kind of just shows, even Alonso, so that kind of just shows you.
Yeah, it's the one. It's those blue ribbon band events that everyone wants to do and they all know about. So for you, would you be looking more like LMP2? Because obviously we've got the LMDH factors coming in within the next couple of years, or is it GT based, or can you say? I don't know.
No, it's, I mean, we're looking at both, to be honest. Okay. I think LMP2, a funny thing's happening that we're coming up against, which is I feel like the demand for seats is really, really high at the moment from a driver's point of view, because like you say, the LMDH stuff is coming along and everybody wants to be in a position to get in those factory seats. Sure. So it's a really hard market to break into, for want of a better term. Yeah. GTs is something that we're definitely looking at as well. It's a little bit cheaper as well to get a budget together for that compared to LMP2. And I'm kind of just keeping an open mind to it. So talking to a lot of different people, but it looks like we'll get something in the bag at least. And then also probably looking at doing something in Formula E this year as well. Nice. That's also still discussions are going on at the moment, but I might end up doing something similar to you, Jake, and being in some kind of support role in one of the teams there.
Yeah, I think Formula E and LMDH kind of outside of F1 anyway, two places to be in the future. So to get a foot in as a reserve or sim drive, whatever it is, I think it's a good idea, because the teams, especially in F1, they want experience. Like, you could have won everything in motorsport, and even they know that even if you jump in the car, it's not guaranteed you're going to do well. So they want to see experience on the sim or testing or whatever.
It's just such a different style of driving, isn't it? Because I've done a few sim sessions now, and it really is a whole new ball game to learn, as is GTs actually, in a similar vein. So I'm trying to approach this year from a point of view, I still have my ambitions in Formula One, obviously. But I think I could only become a better driver by trying these different things. A lot of the time, people coming up for F3 and F2 are quite like blind to. They have the narrow vision on just getting that F1 test and going for the programs. But I think there's a lot to be learned from other types of motorsport.
Yeah, definitely. I think to finish, what's your FTP like at the moment?
Solid 255. It's that's 4.2 watts per kilo for me. I'm pretty light.
Yeah, that's solid, to be fair.
I'm doing a weekly Zwift racing series. So I don't know if you guys Zwift a lot. That's where all the cool kids are over the winter.
I'm surprised you're not coming to us live from the turbo, to be honest.
Well, I was due to be out on the bike this morning. We delayed this podcast for that, didn't we?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I ventured outside for the first time in a long time, and it was scary stuff. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's a bit different, isn't it? When you go outside again after all these months of just sitting and freezing your ass off, then you get to go outside and the speed's like, oh, I'm only on 2 little tiny wheels here. I need to be careful.
I had my first shunt a month or 2 ago. It was not pleasant.
Again,
really low speed as well. It was embarrassing. It was like turning into a side road, and my wheel went through, which I thought was just a puddle, and there was like this layer of thick mud at the bottom of the puddle.
Oh, no.
So my front wheel just went, and I went straight onto the floor. Actually, I've still got the scars from it.
Scars.
Can you hear that?
Buttons. What is it?
Can you hear that? It's the world's smallest violin.
Sacrifices that I'm putting in, Jake, to be in peak physical condition. I don't think you're appreciating.
To be honest, at least you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you what, we haven't really had those issues over here. I think it's only 17 degrees today here in Spain.
Oh, you're in Spain by any chance?
Yeah.
I thought I'd just drop it in there, because I like to mention.
I didn't know.
Day.
Yeah.
I'm desperate to go on a bike holiday, lads, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, well, let's sort it out and we can do maybe another video or something where, get a bit of Adam Blythe on it, get the GoPro on the front and have a chat while we're blowing up the mountains.
We should get a Zwift racing.
Do that as well.
That'd be solid.
Yeah, we can make a video.
Jake might have an aneurysm or something.
Yeah, could quite easily be.
No comment.
Genuinely worried about your health, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm on the way back.
Did you hear that? It was the world's smallest violin.
I've made that joke. I've made it.
Straight back in. Right then, boys. Well, we'll wrap it up there. So thank you very much for coming on, Jack. Really appreciate it. We'll have to get you on again very soon. And I'll do my little outro spiel. So thank you all, the guests and listeners for tuning in. Make sure to follow Jack on all the social media. He's pretty funny. So that'll be good for you with all the memes. And come back here for next week, a brand new episode of the HYM podcast. Follow all our social media channels as well. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HYM podcast. And speak to you all soon. Cheers, guys.
See you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.